Welcome back to Oregon Public Retirement. I'm your host, Daniel Ryan, certified financial planner and IRS enrolled agent, as well as author of the book, Oregon Public Retirement, the Financial Planning Playbook for Oregon Public Servants. In today's topic, we are going to discuss vesting, which is really important for those of you who especially are just starting out your career. But this is applicable to Tier 1, Tier 2, and OPSERP folks. Doesn't matter if you're police and fire or general service. Everyone in the PERS system has the same vesting requirements. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, vesting is a really fancy word for did you work long enough for a PERS employer to know that you are officially in the system? You're going to get a benefit of some kind from the pension itself. That's what vesting really means. So for example, if you first worked maybe 4 years and they were all in the same calendar year, 2020 to 2024, whatever it looked like, if you only did 4 years, PERS is still waiting for you to get to number 5. That's the cutoff for when they actually say, all right, not only are you a PERS member, but you're a vested PERS member. So let's take this step by step. Usually for a school teacher, they're going to do 4 school years to qualify for the 5 different years that PERS actually requires for you to be a vested person. You have to do 600 hours in each of 5 calendar years, which is why I say 4 school years, because the first year is half in one year, half in the next. Then you pick up where you left off and you keep going. But really what that could look like is a whole host of different options for everyone in between. So you might be working for a police officer, as a police officer, a firefighter, or whatever it is, but you got to make sure that you have 600 hours worked at that PERS employer in that calendar year. Then you do that. It doesn't have to be consecutive, but there cannot be a gap of more than 5 years in between each one of those years that you do that. So if, for example, I use some of the extremes here, technically speaking, you could work in 1 year, like 2020, and work 600 hours. Then in 2021, you decided, I'm going to take a break. Totally fine. Then in 2022, you came back, you worked at least another 600 hours. You get to pick up where you left off. And there wasn't more than a 5-year gap, so PERS is okay with this so far. But for most people, what I see is the problem is that they will start in TRS, in Texas, for example, the teacher retirement system, and they'll work 4 years, calendar 4 years in that system. Then they'll move to California and work only 4 years in that system. Then they'll go to Washington and work 4 years in that system. And then they show up in Oregon and they're like, I've been teaching or working for public service for 20 years and you have 0 pensions. And that is devastating because each one of those states that I mentioned have a 5-year commitment that you work for their pension. So even though you've been teaching for 16 or 20 years, you might have no pension whatsoever so far. And that can be a really big problem. Now, what happens if you don't vest and then you don't show up for 5 years? Well, what happens is if you took more than a 5-year break because you didn't have enough to vest yet, PERS is going to put you in what they call loss of membership status. And I have a whole video dedicated to that and what you need to do with that money and how it all works, whether you need to cash out your pension or not, and how you can do that and when you can do that. If you didn't vest and you took more than 5 years to come back, that is basically what they're saying. They're going to basically take you off the books and say, you know what, we don't think you're going to continue to come back here. And so we're going to just remove that and it'll just kind of sit dormant over here. You can come get your money whenever you want, but you're not going to get a pension from us. And that's basically what they're saying. But vesting is critical, especially those of you who are in your younger years and you're trying to figure out, hey, am I going to be in public service for the long haul or not? I would really encourage you to make that decision while you're still working for a public employer in the state of Oregon. That way, you know when you do make that decision that you at least could change your mind a year later or 5 years or 10 years later and come back and pick up right where you left off. You can take off as much time as you want in theory, and that's how vesting works and the importance of it so that you don't make mistakes at a younger time in your life and not realize the implications of something that's going to happen 30 years later when you have no pension to show for all that work that you've put into different pension systems. So until next time, I wish you guys all the best. I appreciate your service to the great state of Oregon, and I wish you a happy planning.